Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Kelly. This is a 25-year look back across the spectrum. My 25 plus years now, 27 years working in the field, working with children with developmental disabilities and autism. And I'm a board certified behavior analyst. I have my partner in crime, Jen Lucero, mom to Dylan and Ethan. Hi, Jen.
Hey, Kelly.
How are we doing today?
We're hanging in there.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's just get to it. And my voice feels a little off, and it's just because of the fires. We had a fire here in California. There was a fire, and there was all kinds of ash that landed in my neighborhood. And so I'm having this weird voice because of allergies, but the fire's contained and no one got hurt. So that's the good part.
Yes.
All right. Today's topic is not fun nor funny. It is transition to adulthood or falling off the cliff.
Yeah.
And boy, don't you know this story.
Yes, for sure.
So if people have listened to us, all of our faithful listeners, they know that Dylan, your son, on the autism spectrum. And when he hit 18 and was eligible to graduate from high school, there were a couple choices that were to be made. Tell us the choices you made. This was 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, well, actually, you really determine it in their junior year of high school, because it's leading up, like the IEP that would be right before the senior year. You have to make a decision. One is that they can get, graduate with a certificate, or, a graduation certificate of completion, which means that they do have a high school diploma. But if you choose that option, then basically, then you're done when they graduate, usually at 18. The other choice is to still walk, and you get a certificate. It's more that you completed, high school, but not a diploma. But then you have the option to go into a transition to adult program, which is still within the school district. And that way the program's a little different. It's still same hours. You're still eligible for transportation to and from the program. And then you're still eligible not only for a certain amount of quote, academic or transition hours, but also for services. So, like, for example, Dylan did receive speech therapy, occupational therapy, behavior services. He had a PBI, which means he has a behavior intervention with him, and he required a one-on-one. So that would continue throughout the day.
Yep.
And he had an ABA supervisor. That's just my kid.
Yep.
Everybody's different. So if you had services in your IEP, they would carry on with you. And then that program continues till the individual turns 22, and it's literally determined on their birthday. So the date that, so the date and year they're born. And so I chose the transition program. It was like a no-brainer when it came for Dylan's situation.
Yep.
So, but just so you know, those are options.
And think about it. It was a great choice you made for Dylan. He loved his transition program, even in a pandemic.
Oh, absolutely. And it was fantastic. It was great. I loved it.
Thrived in it.
Yep.
What made it so great? So other people can hear, like, what makes a good transition program? Because this one was outstanding.
Yeah, it was amazing. Dylan thrives and does well when he is busy and when he has structure and a schedule and activities and things to do. So they provided not only there were goals. He continued to have an IEP. And then he has a behavior plan. So that was all continued and in place, but it was, person centered. So it was based on, all the activities and things that he would be exposed to and do throughout the week was based on his goals. And so for example, there is some, like, he would he still had transportation. So a bus picked him up, took him there. He had a morning routine that was in a classroom. There was about 15 students, but it was crazy because there's a special ed teacher, but there's literally like the ratio is something like 8 adults and 15 kids, because there was the teacher, there's service providers, and then there is behavior interventionists within there. But he also had a one-on-one that actually I was super lucky, wonderful man, Mr. Devon, that was with him through high school and actually went with him to the transition program, and then went throughout all 4 years with him there. So every day was different, but it was consistent like through the week. So, they would do things. A lot was community-based. He did job training. He was working at a place that was an embroidery and printing shop locally in Old Town Tustin. He volunteered at an animal shelter. He loves animals. That was totally based on his IEP, because they did a bunch of testing and questions with him, and he wanted to work with the animals. That was a big thing. Twice a week they went to Crunch Fitness. So he was he hates to exercise, but he would do it because his favorite thrift shop was right next door. So he would have a reinforcement after. Once a week they went to the farmers market. They had life skills. So the transition program had a room that had full laundry set up so they could practice doing laundry. They had a full kitchen that was way nicer than my kitchen at home. And so they did cooking, but the whole structure was based upon, like, it wasn't just the cooking. It's like, okay, we're going to come up with recipes, and then we're going to go to the farmer's market. And, you have your list, what you didn't get at the farmer's market, then we're going to go to the grocery store. And then he was supposed to shop. He was supposed to learn money management. He was supposed to, learn skills to buy this stuff, and hopefully, interact with either at a restaurant or the store. So it was all like very purposeful. They did CBI days, which he loved. He
community-based instruction.
Yeah. So, and they got to choose. So they had a recycling program. So they would, he learned to recycle here. He would take it, they would, get the money, and then they would use the money for CBI. So they would all go bowling together, or the movies, or, go to, I always laugh, some of the places they went, like very bougie, like, fancy malls and stuff like that. But he loved it. And he loves being around people, so
he's a social
it's a huge part of his life, and everybody knows my kid. He's very popular in the city. So, it was going fantastic and great. And so, I loved it, and he loved it.
And let's talk about, for a moment, if anyone follows us on social media, we posted you, Mom, and I was there, Dylan graduating, and he was at his high school. And the day he graduated in December, because his birthday is in December. So he was finished his transition program at the end of this year, 2021. And first of all, that high school had all their high school students come out to the transition special ed program and be a part of their graduation. It was phenomenal.
So cool.
Yep.
It was so neat.
Like one of the coolest things that I've ever seen. And I've been doing this as we said, 27 years, like it was
Yeah.
phenomenal. That school
Yeah.
fully supported, included all those kids.
Yeah.
All right. It was, I mean,
I remember the first day of like when they came back, they did do distance learning for a short amount of time. But when they came back to in person, the guy that was the principal of the entire thing and the transition program happened to be part of it. But he like went and got brunch for like everybody. And and of course Dylan loves food. So it was like, he had him at the brunch, he had him at food, but I just thought it was so cool. And then they really set up a lot of activities where they had friendship days, like if there were holidays, they would all be part of it. They had cookie exchanges, like they did all this stuff together. And I think, for the other students, like it was definitely like a peer-to-peer, like integrate. It was totally inclusion. And for him to come out and like give a speech, and I mean, even before they came out, remember he made this, when in the morning, they do the morning announcements over the loudspeaker and stuff. And like, he made the point to start off with like, we have, a group of students that are, graduating, transitioning today, and named all their names. And it was just so cool. It was really neat.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. So at what point in this did you start planning for what happens when he leaves this program in December? Because if anyone knows you, you're planned way in advance, you're organized. And so then for people to know, at this point, once you finish a transition program, you graduate fully from school at age 22. Then at least in California, and it's true Massachusetts, because I lived there, regional center takes over care. And then if you want your child to continue in a regional center program, then they go into a day hab kind of program, and there are different levels to choose from. And so I want to say almost a year before you started.
Oh yeah, it was definitely a year before. So it was definitely like a full year before I started doing research on my end, and then also through regional center. So there were opportunities where this was during COVID. So unfortunately, it was a little difficult because I couldn't do in-person visits, but I did all my research of like what adult programs were out there, and they're all different types. And obviously based on Dylan and his situation and his IEP and his behavior and intervention plan, I was looking at most likely, behavior-based adult programs. There's all different kinds.
Right.
I was like really excited and pleasantly surprised that I thought because of his behaviors that there would be more limitations, but I was surprised of how many adult programs are out there in Orange County that, were behavior-based, or that was, a huge component of it. I had a criteria. I kind of had a checklist that I made for Dylan. It was pretty much like, I would say about 5 main key points, and then, maybe 3 others. So there's things like Dylan, like I said, is the mayor of Tustin. Like everybody knows him. Like he's been, going to school here and within the city and just out and about. He's been here since he was 4 years old, and pre-K through, he spent his entire school career at Tustin Unified and had a great experience. So, and everything that he was doing that was community-based in his transition program was in Tustin and local, and his job training opportunities. So I was hoping to keep it localized. So that was, maybe number 1 on my criteria. I also wanted to make sure that it was somewhat behavior based, to make sure that, you know, the staff was trained and able to, you know, handle his situation and behaviors as they arise.
Right.
Another one was I wanted to make sure, I was hoping it would have transportation, not necessarily just to make it easier on me, but Dylan loved riding the bus. Like, he's ridden the bus, like it,
He
you
loves
know, the
riding the
little
bus.
yellow bus came
Uh-huh.
to my house every morning, and then would drop him off, you know, after the program. And so, you know, that was obviously a big thing, especially because I work full time.
Mhm.
So, you know, having to just drive around and stuff isn't really like the best idea. Plus, you know, I didn't want Dylan to become super, you know, dependent on me either,
Yep. Yep.
you know.
Right.
And so that was a big one. I wanted to make sure there were a lot of community-based opportunities. So I wanted him to continue what he was learning and doing, to learn independence and to learn skills. Like, you know, I know he's always gonna need assistance and probably be in a situation with a group of people long term, but I want him, even within that, to be as independent as possible. So that was really important to me. And then honestly, I wanted to find places also that had either job training and job opportunities and or volunteer opportunities for him. That was huge. And then I wanted a place that I felt comfortable that they got it, they like understood, and then they accepted it. I wanted inclusion,
Right.
you know, and I didn't want a place that, my biggest fear, I had two fears in this when he aged out. One was that he would end up in a place that he would just be going somewhere and sitting there
Yeah.
and like
Being
hanging
babysat.
out.
Mhm.
Yeah, babysat,
Babysitting. Mhm.
basically. Or he would end up at home sitting on the couch, and that all of the hard work that I worked on for the last 22 years, you know, like, you know, that he would regress.
Yep.
So
Yeah. So he graduated.
yeah.
So first of all, people listening should know Jen and I, when we started this podcast, we were dead set that we were going to talk about a BCBA perspective
Mhm.
and a parent perspective on how we can help support children and adults with autism with quality of life.
Mhm.
And we started this off was, number one, we wanted our kids to be healthy,
Mhm.
right? Number two was happy.
Mhm.
Number three was safe.
Yep.
Number four was as independent as possible.
Mhm.
And number five was to have their tribe or sense of community.
Yep.
All
Absolutely.
of which Dylan was accomplishing in his high school transition program to adulthood.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I will say, to up to his IEP, he had his final triennial in February of 2021, and you know, everybody involved was there, and you know, everything that I just talked about, that was the plan.
Yep.
I did attend a ton of virtual meetings, virtual walkthroughs. You know, I got to see and hear about several different programs. There were probably, like, I would say 3 that really excited me, like for Dylan.
Uh-huh.
And I was like super gung ho and ready on. They were just so cool and perfect. And then, you know, I was also hoping to, a lot of people love my kids. So there's some people that actually wanted to move on with us,
Yep.
which was cool.
Yep.
And then so we were on the path for that, and I thought, oh wow, okay, I felt like, oh wow, I have all these options. And so we were exploring that, and we were trying to get on waiting lists or whatever, what's the next steps. And then it was like June. Yes, June.
Mm-hmm.
June, the end of June. And all of a sudden I got a phone call from Regional Center, and because of Dylan at the time, so with his IEP and everything, that is sent to the Regional Center. And then there is a department of someone, it's most likely a medical professional, it's probably a RN, that looks at your child's IEP and like everything, and including your health records, which is on your IEP. And because Dylan has an EpiPen for a bee sting, but he's actually never had to use it. And the last time he got stung by a bee was 8 years ago. And it was a precautionary thing.
Right.
And he had it for 8 years with the school district. His whole staff was trained by the school nurse. And he had it on his person. So they had one at the classroom, but they also had one in his backpack, and his BI had one with him, and he was trained, but we never had to use it. But because
So a
whoever was doing it,
school
yeah, the school was totally cool.
will take this
Yeah.
on, no problem.
Yeah, it was never even a
Yep.
thing,
Yep.
They actually trained the entire staff, like, of the transition program,
Mm-hmm.
not only for the EpiPen, but, multiple things like seizures, obviously
Mhm.
CPR, all that. It was just part of the training. But anyone that was working with Dylan in the classroom, or even other people that could possibly be with him, community-based, everybody was trained. Never an issue. Never even thought about it,
Right.
honestly.
Yep.
I just thought if anything was going to hold back some opportunities, it would be his behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
So basically I got a phone call, and it was a checklist, I guess. And if they check and see if there's any type of, medical type of thing, and the EpiPen, I guess, was one of them, it puts you at a certain level of care. And so it totally just spun everything out of control. And I was told that there's only one option at the time, and that was going to be in Fullerton, which is really far from where we live.
Yep.
There would be no transportation, so I would have to take him there and back. He was only being referred there, and it was only because of EpiPen, but it was medical based, and it was people that are medically vulnerable. So there's definitely, different types of clientele, and that was the only option. And I was just like, I felt like someone punched me in the stomach.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Dylan.
Right.
It just like threw me off so much. I couldn't even believe it,
So you sort of ended up with these narrow interests, and let's talk about the fact that you did all this. You picked one despite all of this.
Yeah, they ended up opening a second campus near us,
Mm-hmm.
pretty close. And I found this out through the grapevine. I was told by the regional center, but so I kind of did what I do,
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't getting any answers. So I found out where the place was, and I drove over there, and I walked in the door, and I asked, about information. They asked if I could talk to the director.
You literally just walked in.
I just walked in.
Yep.
And then I did like that the facility was beautiful. I mean, it aesthetically, and it was cool. And I ended up having a tour, and his OT went with me, and she liked it too. But we were weary, because it was more like medically vulnerable, individuals I saw in there, which is fine. But, I was worried about, first of all, like social interaction, but also because Don has behaviors that
Right.
made me a little nervous.
You don't want
I
him
mean,
taking
you
anyone
remember
out.
when he was little, he would love to see like some old ladies with
Yep.
like walkers and knock them down and stuff.
Yeah.
So, that made me a little worried, but,
He does that.
yeah, so,
So let's fast forward
yeah.
today.
Yeah.
It's March 3rd. So
Yes.
Dylan graduated in December.
December 17th.
Yep.
Because his birthday is December 10th.
Yep.
So if your birthday is before the end of the year, before the next January 1st deadline, then you age out. I even tried to fight this because at the time I was like, there's no actual placement for Dylan yet in place. So I said, is there any possible way? I talked to the school district. I talked to the head of special ed. They did talk to me, and they did say that, especially the transition program, that we would love to continue to have Dylan here. We love Dylan, and they were, I had people crying that when he left. So
Yep.
but it's a federal law, and it's based upon your birthday. So because he's December 10th, the natural flow is, before the winter break, the school ended on December 17th. So that's why he aged out. There's no option, even though there's an empty seat sitting there in his classroom right now. So it's crazy because honestly, then boom, and he did okay when it was the winter break, because that's a natural break to him.
That's
so
right.
he was like, okay, I got 2.5 weeks off for Christmas through New Year's. But then and I talked to him about it a ton, but I don't think it sunk in until he was supposed to go back. And because I didn't have anything in place, it was really hard. And it was sad because it took a while. He kept getting his backpack. He was getting everything prepared. The first week, he's like clockwork, he would tell me when it's time to go get on the bus and stuff. And he was just bummed out, what just happened, Yeah.
And so, well, first of all, we all know in January, the pandemic was out of control, right? And so if the day program had worked out, and we can tell everyone, he's still nowhere.
No,
it's March 3rd. He's nowhere.
No.
So the pandemic, certainly everyone can understand.
Yeah.
I know I work for a company, our day programs were not allowed to open.
Yeah. And I understand too. I work for a company where we're very limited on, and we're easily, slowly easing into more activity.
Yep.
And I understand that.
Yep. My company has day programs, and they did virtual, right? It was the least they could do. They made sure they virtually touch base every single day with every client in their day program. Is Dylan in a day program right now?
No, he's not. Nope. And with that means that all of his services had stopped too. I'm very lucky that I have a bunch of people that have Dylan's back. So I still have access to materials and stuff. But so I implement them myself. And I rely on, my family is really stepping up to help me. But it's a challenge, because I work full time, and I have a pretty big job. And so it's hard, because I think what's the hardest about it is, knowing that Dylan could be doing so much more, and I've definitely seen regression.
Yeah,
for sure. I've noticed, I mean, even my parents have said, because he spends a lot of time over there, that he's talking less.
Yep.
He's definitely, as time goes on, he gets lazy, he gets bossy,
Yep.
but I mean, luckily I haven't seen aggression. There hasn't been, I should knock on wood,
Yeah.
there hasn't been destruction of property, anything like that, but it's almost just as sad to see this stuff that he was excelling at and doing, and that he doesn't have the opportunity to be doing that right now. And then the longer too, you've known Dylan since he was 4 years old.
Yep.
Anybody that knows my kid, I think for most of our kids, the longer that he is not in a program, then the harder it's going to be to get him on board. Yep. And get him to, want to do things again. You know what I mean?
And frankly, I just saw him today before we started recording. He seems depressed and sad.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's like trying to be at his jammies, like if he's home all day. Yep. Well, I mean, he does that anyways, but like more, he's trying to, I think he's bored, so he just tries to sleep. I mean, he's still like, he's been good about sleeping at night, but it's like he just goes and, if he's not out with somebody, he's just like, or I'm like, okay, I have meetings, but then grandpa's gonna come get you. Like he just said, all right, I'm just gonna go to sleep.
Yeah. And you work full time for Special Olympics, and I know you've been taking him out with you, and he's like your intern right now.
Yeah.
Right. And you're trying to make sure he stays engaged and busy.
Yeah.
So if anyone's listening, we're pissed.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled. It's really disappointing. And so that's why, like, I care so much about, like, for me, it's always like, it always started, of course, with Dylan. But I mean, I was a total different path when I started this. Like I knew nothing about autism, and I got thrown into it. And I mean, my background is I was an art major, and I worked for Disney. I was a designer, but then I totally changed my path because of Dylan at first, learning, especially early on, because there wasn't a ton available, like there is now. But then I found like a niche, and I grew to love helping people with not just autism, but all, abilities, and, and so I care so much. Like I worked for the school district for almost 7 years.
Yep.
And in special ed, and I love my students, and most of them actually just started this year, the year that Dylan graduated, Age of Doubt. All my kids that I worked with are in that transition program. Yep. So I just want to say to all the families, like, I know it probably sounds crazy because your kids just started, but you need to start now. Like you need to be progressively active and like looking at things, and have your guard up too, of if your child has any sort of medical type of situation.
Yep.
But people got to get with the program too. These regional center, the adult programs, our kids aren't just like, there's not just a check mark, like I know so many kids, like, okay, 30% of our kids that have autism also have epilepsy or could have a seizure, right?
Right.
There's so many kids that I know. So you're telling me if they see like that kid had a seizure, that could be a check mark that will also put you in this category where they're going to say you're medically, you need a certain level of medical care, like you have to have an LVN on site or whatever. It's still so insane to me. because he was out around town all day and testing, and that was okay, but now all of a sudden it's not.
I'm sure someone listening might talk about that there are regulations, and we understand the
We
regulations.
understand that, of course.
But
I mean, I was even trying to, I was also like during this whole process I was trying to be proactive and like,
Yep.
also like, hey, can we train people? Not just, okay, even if you want to send them to this program or facility, okay, that's fine because you think he needs a certain level of care, but you also have to take in consideration that he needs behavior based
right.
intervention too. And so you can't just have one or the other. I was also like with the EpiPen, I was willing to sign waivers on it.
Yep.
They said no. I mean, so, I'm currently now looking into, I didn't even know this was possible, but he just had his blood drawn this week, and where the part of it is to see there's certain like thing within the blood that they can test the certain venom for the bee sting,
right.
So I'm trying to see if this is actually truly a thing. And if not, maybe I can get this off of there and that it will open up doors. But I just want families to know, because it caught me and you and everybody that we knew.
Yep.
And even this transition program so off guard that this would be so limiting to his future, that I just want people to know, because there could be like something that you just don't even think about that like is going to come up like last minute and is going to like, blow your world up, you know what I mean?
Yep. And so that's why we're calling this transition to adulthood or falling off the cliff.
Yeah.
Because Dylan is literally, despite everything that's happening, in theory, falling off the cliff because he's been home since December.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's crazy because it's like, dude, we made it through COVID.
Right.
And he's thrived and he did so well. And what's weird about it is, what's strange about it is the fact that even if he got into a program, and even if they were, I understand if they weren't opening, but he could still distance learn and have all the opportunities and services.
Yep.
Because he did well, like that. He thrived. He still had everything. But now there's nothing unless I am doing it myself. Like, he is receiving no services.
Nothing.
So not only is he not in an adult day program, that cuts out that he is no longer getting speech therapy, OT, ABA, like, he's just chilling out, like trying to sleep, and
All right.
crazy.
Yep, it's crazy. So we're pissed.
Yeah, and I'm tired.
We'll get
thank God this is only audio, because I'm sure I look like a hag right now.
So we're anyone listening, anything on this, you want to reach out to us. We get the laws, we get the regulations. We're just saying we can all be doing better, people. So we'll keep you posted next episode.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly.